There are two chapters in this book that I think address two of the concerns that I've heard you express to me. One is chapter 4, because it seems to deal with unchecked immigration and refugees seeking protection. It's called Immigrating the Legal Way. And I've had several of you tell me that the status of undocumented foreigners is your primary reason for supporting our government's actions to find and deport those breaking our laws, despite what's taught in the Bible. So the other chapter is chapter 6, and I'm going to attempt to go through these two chapters as quickly as possible, wind this up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and then like Paul said, if you have a topic you'd like to move on to, you can let me know. I'm leaning towards 1st and 2nd Peter as a follow-on. I don't have any notes prepared, so I may need a little time to prepare as we go along, but we'll see how that goes. So chapter 6 is entitled Concerns About Immigration. Based on what I hear, many U.S. citizens are truly afraid of what the number of immigrants arriving here will mean for crime rates, job opportunities, our physical security, our customs, and perhaps even our preferred political party. So I've already been given articles to read about Muslim teachings, and I will admit to you that I don't know very much about the Muslim faith, but it has a growing number of followers, and ignoring it seems to be imprudent to me compared to trying to understand why. So a lot of you have purchased this book, and in that regard I hope that there may be some interest in pursuing the things that are in there. So I would like to offer myself to you at some other opportunity to discuss what's in this book, just not from this setting. So I can make myself available if there's enough interest to do this, and if there's not enough interest to do it, we'll stop, as apparently the wishes of the class are. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. I am disappointed. However, there's much to learn, and we're going to move on. So let's turn to, if you have the book, let's turn to chapter 4. I'm going to read pages 67 through 69 and a half here. We're going to talk about immigrating the legal way. Starts off saying, if you don't have the book, I apologize for reading to you, but if you don't have the book, it's kind of hard to know what I'm talking about without seeing it before you. Starts off saying, American citizenship is priceless, and it ought to be done the legal way, just like my ancestors did. That is a quote from U.S. Representative James Sensenbrenner on CBS News' Face the Nation. Hang on to that quote in the back of your mind, because we're going to address it here in a couple pages of the book. One of the greatest points of confusion for many native-born U.S. citizens, such as those whose ancestors came through Ellis Island, is why illegal immigration has become so common. It is reasonable to expect that immigrants wishing to start a new life in the United States go about the proper legal channels to reside here. Much of the frustration revolves around why 11 million people decided to enter the country illegally or to overstay a temporary visa. Misconceptions persist about how our immigration system works today. Many believe people stay undocumented to avoid paying taxes or preferring to be paid in cash under the table. It simply is not right, they argue, for people to receive government services like education and emergency health care when they refuse to pay their taxes like everybody else. Others think the undocumented are simply unwilling to fill out the proper forms to obtain a green card and a Social Security number. Once at a training session on citizenship and immigration law for social workers, a well-meaning social worker whose clients were mostly immigrants expressed his bewilderment at the apparent unwillingness of many of his Mexican clients to get a Social Security card. His Polish clients, he said, go to the Social Security office as soon as they arrive, but many Mexicans never go. He was under the impression they never acquired a valid Social Security card because of sloth. He was genuinely surprised to learn that they were almost certainly ineligible to apply for a Social Security card since they had not been legally admitted to live and work in the United States, while his Polish clients were apparently lawful residents with valid green cards or work authorization. You know what I'm talking about when I say a green card? It's a work permit, essentially. If you're a non-resident here and you don't have a work permit, then any job you have is kind of under the radar, is the best way of describing it. Employers are supposed to check green cards. They're not supposed to offer employment to anybody that doesn't have a legal right to work here. However, they do.
What is sloth? Where to use that word?
Laziness, okay? Because of laziness. They don't get a card because they're
I was
lazy.
expecting something.
Slow moving. A sloth is a slow moving animal. If you've ever seen one, it's like watching a turtle.
I thought there was something disconnected.
Still, others are vaguely aware of the legal processes necessary to obtain a green card, knowing this involves filling out various forms available from the government, which are then adjudicated by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, formerly the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and recognize that, as with any bureaucracy, this process will likely take some time. Some suppose the immigrants who come illegally have chosen to forgo this legal process because they simply are too impatient to wait their turn in line. If the issue were really, as anti-immigration activists often suggest, that people who are undocumented refuse to go through the legal channels and wait their turn, or are lazy, it would be entirely reasonable to think them outrageous for demanding to be subsequently rewarded for having entered or overstayed illegally. If this were really the situation, Christians who are directed by Scripture to be welcoming and hospitable to the stranger, but who do not want to be taken advantage of, might therefore, pardon me, okay?
Aren't we all immigrants? The Indians didn't give green cards to the first white people that came here.
Well, I believe the
They
treaty,
didn't have permission to be here and work and still take everything and
I believe
ownership on stuff that we didn't have.
I believe the treaties with the Native Americans,
I can't stand it. I cannot stand it.
okay,
There you go.
Christians who are directed by Scripture to be welcoming and hospitable to the stranger, but who do not want to be taken advantage of, might therefore prefer to reserve their hospitality exclusively for legal immigrants. The reality, though, is that immigration today is not so simple. And most undocumented immigrants are undocumented not because they chose to remain that way, but because there is no process for them to enter legally or obtain legal status. As we saw in chapter 3, the immigration policies in our country have changed dramatically since the era of Ellis Island, where 98% of immigrants who arrived here were admitted into the United States, usually after just a few hours of processing and without need of a visa. So when you hear people like James Sensenberger, and this quote we read earlier on here says American citizenship is priceless and it ought to be done the legal way, just like my ancestors did. How did his ancestors immigrate into the United States? They showed up on a boat, they went to Ellis Island, they answered a few questions, and unless they had a medical problem, infectious disease, or a criminal record, they were admitted into the United States without a visa, without quotas, without any questions.
Tom,
Yes,
I'd just like to say Samantha is having a bad day.
I saw that she was up there before class started. I didn't know what the problem was.
Bad day. I don't know what her problem is either.
Okay,
So,
A little bit more involved.
I understand. I'm on the first full paragraph of page 69. Now, though, we might encourage undocumented immigrants to wait their turn in line, which is often no line they can stand in. They can repeatedly line up at the U.S. consulate, pay a substantial fee, and apply for a visa, but for the majority, especially those without substantial education or financial resources, they will leave the consulate disappointed, finding there is not even a line in which to wait. Now that part was kind of confusing to me when I read the book. Now, I don't know about most of you, but anytime that you try to take a vacation somewhere, you basically apply to the either the place you're buying your ticket for your cruise ship or your vacation package supplier or whatever, and they line up the necessary visas for you. You don't even have to do it in person. It's a temporary process. So the thought that it is almost non-existent for certain types of people we're going to read about here shortly was a bit of a shock to me. So we're going to look next at immigration statuses. When you hear one second, and then I'll come to you. When you hear the term immigration statuses, this is what makes the difference between documented and undocumented. When you hear undocumented aliens or illegal aliens, what they're talking about is these three statuses. Okay, Melvin.
Well, what does hard for me to make sense out of are these last few lines in this paragraph that you just read.
Okay.
They can repeatedly line up at the U.S. consulate, pay substantial fee, apply for a visa, but for the majority, especially those without substantial education or financial resources, they will leave the consulate disappointed, finding there is not even a line in which to wait. They just said they could line up, and then the 4 lines down said there's no line from the line up in.
No, if you line up, what they're saying is if you line up, you're going to walk away without what you went there for. That's what they're saying. When we look into these statuses, it's going to make a better explanation. That was kind of a poorly worded paragraph. Hang on, we're going to talk about that. All right? Let's look at these immigration statuses. I'm in the immigration statuses on page 69. If we are to understand the current immigration problem, we need to start by understanding how the U.S. immigration system works today, which is the root of why we have so many undocumented immigrants living among us. In general, there are 3 basic statuses that a foreigner, i.e. foreign-born, residing in the United States can have. They can be a legal non-immigrant, they can be a lawful permanent resident, or a U.S. citizen. Most foreigners who do not have one of these statuses are considered undocumented, meaning they have no legal status to be here and could be legally deported solely on that basis. So you with me so far? I know I'm going fast, but I got a lot to cover in 4 weeks. First status is called a non-immigrants. Foreigners on a non-immigrant visa are admitted into the United States on a temporary basis, usually either as tourists, business travelers, temporary workers, or students. Those non-immigrants have come to stay for a limited These non-immigrants have come to stay for a limited period, and their home is still in the country they came from. Depending on the specific details of their visas, they may or may not be allowed to work while during their time in the United States. If they are not authorized to work, but do so anyway, they could risk deportation. Visitor visas are typically granted at the U.S. consulate. This is the part you were talking about, Melvin. You report to the U.S. consulate, you say, I want to immigrate to the United States. And you ask for a visa. Here's what's going to happen. Visitor visas are typically granted at the U.S. consulate in a foreign country. The visa is sealed into a foreign passport, and in most cases the visitor will then be allowed to enter the United States. To be granted a visa, the U.S. government must determine that the potential visitor meets all the admissibility requirements set forth in the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is the federal law that governs immigration. These requirements include prohibitions against people with certain infectious diseases, people who have committed certain crimes, people who are expected to be a public charge, costing this country money. Among other requirements, Even with a visa, visitors can be refused entrance when they arrive if they meet one or more of the grounds of inadmissibility. Non-immigrant visas, did I hear a question? I thought I heard a
I have
question.
a question.
Okay.
Or it's more of a statement.
Okay.
How about you teach a class on Native American culture, religion, and tradition?
Well, for one, I don't know it. I'd have to learn it. But I'd be glad to talk about it if the elders would like to have a class.
And they don't teach crap in school about it.
Okay. Non-immigrant visas generally have a specific expiration date. If a person stays in the United States beyond that time and has not arranged to change their status, they become undocumented. In fact, about 42% of the estimated 11 million people who are undocumented come on a valid visitor visa but overstayed, including the majority of those who arrived in the past decade. These visa overstayers come from every country in the world, and for obvious geographic reasons, undocumented immigrants from locations other than Mexico, Canada, and Central America are more likely to have entered on a visitor visa and overstayed than to have crossed a border illegally. Move on, or we got questions? All right.
I think what I hear you saying is that a lot of people come over here either with a spouse or some with a job legally,
With a temporary visa, yes.
and then when their visa expires,
42% of them,
choose to stay.
they overstay their visa. And that,
So if they have a job and they're going to work every day, is that employer responsible for this undocumented?
well, first of all, you may have noticed it said that not everybody that comes in on a temporary visa is allowed to work. So if they are allowed to work and if they have a specific date, it's usually for a specific project.
I know a lady from Israel who, she would come over here and then she'd go back and forth between the Keys and the United States because technically she had to get another visa to go to the Keys. So she'd just keep getting visas over and over again and stay here.
We're going to talk a little later in this chapter about the waiting time for certain classes of individuals to receive travel visas. And that's
She
what,
had a school one, and I don't remember exactly how she did it, but she cheated the system. But it worked.
there's a lot of cheating the system going on. That's that's why people are upset.
What I don't understand, why, if they have a visa, why would they not be allowed to work?
Sometimes it's a visa like a tourist visa. I mean, if you were asking for a visa to say go to, I don't know, pick a country, all you want to do is travel. You just want to go into the country temporarily for a few weeks, or to live over there for a summer vacation, or something like that. And you don't necessarily want to work. You just want to see the sights. Okay.
So I guess there's different visas there.
There are different visas, and like they pointed out in here, we went kind of fast. Student visas and research visas tend to get the most popularity because colleges will support them. Colleges will say, yeah, we want Dr. So-and-so to come in here and teach a course on blah, 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 blah. You know, the course is going to run from this time period to this time period. Can we get a temporary visa for them to come in here and teach this class? You know, so, yes.
If they've got this temporary visa and it is about to expire, do they have the option of paying attention to it and getting it renewed themselves?
It's going to talk about that. Yes, they can sometimes renew that.
I read this chapter before.
Yeah, it can possibly be renewed. It can possibly be used to shift to another status.
In other words, that would be their responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be just like if you're granted a license from the state, okay, to drive a car. All right, it's up to you to see to it that you renew that license when it comes time to renew. Yes, the state normally reminds you, but
Still your responsibility to do it, or
Yeah.
they let you know you've been
Yeah.
irresponsible.
yep. Okay. It is precisely because so many temporary visitors have overstayed their visas, I'm in the middle of page 70, overstay their visas often with that intention in mind, even though before they leave their home countries, that it can be very difficult to obtain a visitor visa. The U.S. government is wary of granting a visa to anyone who deems likely to overstay. So it is nearly impossible for many of the world's poor to obtain a visitor visa because the potential for economic advancement is so strong by staying in the United States that consulate officials consider them too high a risk. Conversely, many Western Europeans who live in and have steady employment in countries where economic standards are roughly equivalent to those in the United States can enter the United States without difficulty as a non-immigrant visitor. In fact, for some countries, the visitor requirement is waived. That may be the person you were talking about, Samantha. Someone who regularly comes and goes because of their job, and they're from a country that normally has about the same standard of living as the United States, and so they get a visa pretty much whenever they ask for it. Okay? So, in general, if you are in a country that you're having trouble getting a job, you're in a country where you're being persecuted, you're in a country where you want to flee for your safety, those are the people that can't get temporary visas because the government's afraid of them overstaying. And that's why it says you can wait in line, you can pay your fees, you can ask to be given a visa, and you won't be given a visa unless you can show that it's your intention to honor that expiration date and come back to that country.
So if you need help, you can't get help.
Say that again, I didn't hear.
People that need like their life saved, screw them. But if you want to come over here and work and make money and pay taxes, you can do that.
Well, I'm not going to get into the politics, but essentially, you have people in need, and that is what we're trying to address in this class. People in need, not necessarily people who want to travel just because they've never been to Lithuania, they've never been to Albania, they've never been to someplace like that. Yeah. Yes.
I talked to an individual just this last week that's been here in the United States for 30 years or more. He was from Poland, and he was a political refugee.
Yes.
Was allowed to come in because of circumstances.
Yes.
Because at the time he came here, Poland was a communist country.
Yes.
And so he was allowed to come here. He's got a pretty good job, and he contributes to our society. And so I'm sure that has reason why he's able to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
People being slaughtered and their country's blown up and their babies getting their heads blown off, they can't come here?
in a nutshell.
Sounds real good. That sounds right, don't it?
Well, that's what we're struggling with refugees. She senses my frustration. Yes.
I had a neighbor when I went to Texas that came there every winter, but as far as I know, she didn't have the option. She had to go back to Canada and get permission to come back for the next winter. She didn't have any choice, as I understood from her, and I didn't really think too much about the immigration part of it.
I was about to say something last night.
Hang on just a second.
Sounds law, doesn't make it right.
Well, we are not attempting to right the world's wrongs. We're in the process of explaining a complicated system.
Why not? Why not? Why are we not supposed to right the world's wrongs? Isn't that what we're supposed to do as Christians?
I can't answer that. All right. Let me see if we can get finished here, at least with this first status. So in a nutshell, the reason why it is so difficult to get a non-immigrant status is because it's been abused. People say they want to go over to the United States for 6 months to a year to learn abroad, and then when their visa is over,
Clinton spent like $7 million on freaking crystal glassware And she didn't even use our own country people. She didn't use our own countrymen. She sent it off to another country and gave the money to some other country.
And what are we to do about that?
I don't know, but I don't know.
In some cases, visitors who admit to the United States on a temporary basis can apply to adjust their status to that of a lawful permanent resident. We're going to talk about what that entails. Even if they have already overstayed. For example, a student who falls in love with and marries a U.S. citizen while studying at a university in the United States would be in most cases eligible to adjust status and obtain a green card without ever leaving the country. In other cases, the only option for individuals to leave the United States and process their petition for lawful permanent resident status through the U.S. consulate in their home country, which often causes further complications. So, in a nutshell, you have to have one of these three statuses to be considered documented. The first status involves a temporary visa. It is normally conducted by the U.S. consulate in their home country, and essentially, unless you have some special skill, it's going to be difficult to get from countries like Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Central American countries, because those countries have already abused the system often enough. The U.S. government's reluctant to grant non-immigrant status. Any questions? Okay. We've only got a couple minutes. I'm going to start reading in lawful permanent residence because that seems to be the one that has the most complications. As I read it, look for ways that this is a misnomer, because this is not really permanent. Lawful permanent residents are not permanent. Also look for how the status can lead to citizenship for themselves as well as others in their family. And then if you want to read something for next week, on page 76 and 77, there is down at the bottom of the pages, it talks about waiting your turn in line. If you're talking about what it takes in order to wait in line, this is the time frames we're talking about. Some of these range up to 21 years waiting in line to immigrate to the United States. Maybe we are out of time. Okay. Any thoughts on that? That's where we're headed. We're going to try and finish chapter 4 and chapter 6. Yes.
I wanted to say, my grandfather came to the United States from Hungary. He came alone because at that time when he came to the United States, just like it says in this one chapter, in this one paragraph, he had to study the English language, be able to speak English. He had to know government. He had to know civics of being in an area and residing with people that might not be the same as him, as well as him. And he had to establish himself where he established himself in St. Louis, but he came in at Ellis Island. And before he could send for his wife, who was promised to him as children, he had to establish himself, have a job, have a place to live, and then she was able to come to the United States after he became a citizen. And after she came over, they were married, and she was a citizen by marriage, which I understand they don't do anymore.
Yep.
So, but he established himself, and he had to go through and learn all these different things that are taught, or should be taught in school today.
Well, that's because he wanted to be a naturalized citizen.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that's because he wanted to be a naturalized citizen in order to get his wife to come over here. But if you don't have the means to become a naturalized citizen,
And he had no money.
yeah.
He had to earn his money.
All right. That's where we're headed. Thank you for your comments.